Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Stop scrolling right now because the smallest coin in your pocket could be hiding a story so unbelievable that it sounds like a legend whispered among collectors. A story about the Lincoln penny dated 2012 from the United States. A coin with a humble 1-cent face value that has been linked in numismatic history to an astonishing valuation of $451 million. And today we are diving deep into how such a modern penny could even be spoken about in the same breath as the world's most valuable treasures, because this is not just about copper and zinc. It is about rarity, mystery, human error, and the powerful psychology of collecting that can transform an ordinary object into something priceless. Imagine the shock of discovering that a coin struck in Denver in 2012, a year many people remember clearly, could hold the kind of value usually reserved for ancient gold or legendary prototypes. And that shock is exactly what fuels the fascination around this penny. Because the 2012 Lincoln cent represents the perfect storm where minting anomalies, transitional possibilities, die varieties, and undocumented production quirks collide with collector demand, speculation, and storytelling, creating a narrative that refuses to die and continues to trend across social media, coin forums, and viral videos. To understand how the 2012 penny reached such an almost mythic status, you have to start with the nature of modern minting itself, which relies on massive automated systems, designed for efficiency rather than perfection, meaning that when something goes wrong, it can go wrong in spectacular and unexpected ways. And while most errors are caught and destroyed, history has proven again and again that a few escape, slipping quietly into circulation where they remain hidden for years before someone notices something strange. Collectors believe the legendary $451 million valuation is tied to a hypothetical but widely discussed convergence of errors and circumstances, including the possibility of an experimental or transitional composition planchet being struck with standard 2012 dies, a dramatic off-metal error that would echo the famous 1943 copper cents or 1944 steel cents, but in a modern context where documentation is tighter and surviving examples would be almost non-existent, creating instant rarity on a scale that defies normal price guides. Add to that the idea of a perfect storm of die errors, such as an extreme double die obverse with visible separation on Lincoln's profile, lettering, and date, combined with a dramatic reverse die break or retained cud that fundamentally alters the appearance of the memorial design, and you begin to see how a single coin could become unique or effectively unique in the eyes of the market. Uniqueness is everything in high-end numismatics because when there is only one confirmed example of something, traditional valuation methods collapse, and the price becomes whatever the most motivated buyer is willing to pay, especially if that buyer believes they are acquiring a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. The Denver Mint in 2012 produced billions of cents, which ironically strengthens the story, because the sheer volume increases the chances of rare mistakes while simultaneously making it harder to track them, and in such an environment, a coin with undocumented characteristics could exist for years without verification, feeding rumors, theories, and speculation that drive interest and inflate perceived value. Another layer to the $451 million narrative involves condition rarity, because collectors do not just want errors, they want them preserved in pristine, almost impossible states of mint condition, and the idea of a 2012 penny with a dramatic error that somehow survived circulation untouched, with full original luster, sharp details, and no environmental damage, pushes the imagination into overdrive, yet history shows that improbable survivals do happen, often discovered in original rolls, mint bags, or forgotten collections. Grading plays a crucial role here, because a top-tier certification from a respected grading service can legitimize a coin story, and in the hypothetical scenario that fuels this valuation, the penny would receive a designation unlike any other, a label acknowledging not just an error but a previously unknown minting event, instantly elevating it into the realm of numismatic legend. Collectors also point to the cultural timing of 2012. Years saturated with digital record-keeping, social media, and global connectivity, which paradoxically makes mystery more alluring, because in an age where everything is documented, the idea that something slipped through unnoticed captures the imagination, and that imagination translates directly into demand. Demand is the engine of value, and when millions of people are captivated by the same story, even a penny can become a symbol of possibility, hope, and the thrill of discovery, encouraging countless individuals to check their change, search their jars, and dream about finding something extraordinary. The $451 million figure itself has become part of the mythology, representing not just a price but a statement, a way of saying that this coin transcends normal collecting logic and enters the territory of art, history, and cultural phenomenon, where numbers are less about metal content and more about narrative power. Skeptics, of course, question such valuations, but skepticism has never stopped a market fueled by belief, and belief is the most valuable currency of all, especially when combined with the undeniable fact that genuine error coins from the past have sold for staggering sums once thought impossible. The Lincoln cent is particularly powerful in this respect because it is the most widely recognized coin in American history, featuring a beloved president and a design that spans generations, making any extraordinary example instantly relatable and desirable to both seasoned collectors and newcomers alike. The 2012 Penny story also taps into the romance of the underdog, the idea that something overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted can suddenly be revealed as priceless, a narrative that resonates deeply in a world where people crave surprises and hidden potential. From a technical perspective, discussions often focus on mint tolerances, alloy testing, die life cycles, and quality control procedures, with theorists proposing scenarios where experimental blanks, foreign planchets, or misallocated materials could have entered the Denver production line, even briefly, creating coins that were never meant to exist. Such possibilities, while rare, are not purely fictional, as documented cases from other years prove that mints are not immune to human error or procedural anomalies, and when those anomalies intersect with a popular series like the Lincoln cent, the resulting coins can achieve fame far beyond their physical size. The viral nature of the 2012 Penny narrative is also driven by modern media dynamics, where a single compelling claim can be shared, debated, amplified, and reshaped across platforms, turning a niche topic into mainstream curiosity, and every retelling adds another layer of intrigue, reinforcing the idea that somewhere out there, a fortune is hiding in plain sight. This feedback loop between curiosity and belief sustains the legend, ensuring that the 2012 Penny remains a trending subject year after year, regardless of how many are found or not found, because the hunt itself becomes part of the value proposition. Even the act of searching through change becomes meaningful, transforming a mundane activity into a treasure hunt, and that emotional engagement is something money alone cannot buy. Collectors often say that the true worth of a coin lies not just in its price but in the story it tells, and few stories are as compelling as that of a modern penny allegedly worth hundreds of millions, challenging our assumptions about value, rarity, and significance. Whether the $451 million valuation is ever realized in a public sale is almost beside the point, because the impact of the story has already been felt, inspiring new collectors, reigniting interest in pocket change, and reminding people that history is not always ancient. Sometimes it is minted right in front of us and quietly passed from hand to hand. The 2012 Lincoln penny, in this narrative, becomes a symbol of possibility, a reminder that extraordinary things can emerge from ordinary circumstances, and that the next great discovery could be sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or a wallet. As you think about this story, consider how many coins you have handled without a second glance, how many opportunities might have slipped by unnoticed, and how the thrill of discovery is still alive in a world that often feels fully explored. If this story sparked your curiosity, fueled your imagination, or made you want to check your change a little more carefully, then you are already part of the journey, and journeys are always better when shared. So like the video if you enjoyed this deep dive into the legendary 2012 Lincoln penny. Subscribe for more incredible coin stories and hidden history, and keep searching because the next viral treasure could be closer than you think. Next, 2015 Lincoln penny. Stop scrolling right now because the humble Lincoln penny you have ignored for years could be hiding one of the most shocking stories in American coin history. A story so unbelievable that collectors still debate it in hushed tones. And it all centers on the Lincoln penny 2015 USA. A coin that most people assume is worth only 1 cent but that, under the rarest and most extreme circumstances, has been whispered to carry a face value narrative soaring to an astonishing $452 million worth of big money in history, and this story begins with the simple truth that the Denver Mint in 2015 was operating at massive production levels, striking billions of Lincoln cents for everyday circulation, which is exactly the environment where rare mistakes, unusual metal compositions, and once-in-a-generation anomalies can quietly slip through unnoticed, because when machines run nonstop, dies wear down, planchets mix, and human oversight becomes imperfect. creating the perfect storm for numismatic legends to be born. Imagine a freshly struck 2015 penny dropping into a bin, indistinguishable from millions of others, yet carrying a combination of errors so rare that experts say the odds rival winning multiple lotteries in a row. And that is where the fascination begins, because this penny is not about a single flaw but about the possibility of stacked anomalies occurring together, including off-metal strikes where a copper-plated zinc cent could be struck on a wrong planchet intended for another denomination, transitional metal errors echoing historic shifts in U.S. coinage, extreme die clashes leaving ghostly impressions of Lincoln's profile and reverse details overlapping in unnatural ways, and double die characteristics so bold that inscriptions appear to vibrate with movement when tilted under light, each letter slightly shadowed as if history itself tried to repeat the strike. Collectors obsess over the 2015 because Denver minted cents often show subtle die markers. And when those markers combine with a rare wrong metal composition or a dramatic off-center strike that still shows a full date and mint mark, the value leaps from curiosity to legend, and the narrative grows even larger when rumors circulate of experimental planchets accidentally mixed into regular production, a mistake that has precedent in U.S. mint history and fuels the belief that a single confirmed example could rewrite price guides forever. Consider also the possibility of a mule error, where the obverse and reverse dies were never meant to meet, creating a coin that defies classification, and while such errors are vanishingly rare, they are precisely the type that drive valuations into the stratosphere because they represent moments when the minting process broke its own rules. The $452 million figure is not about everyday market reality but about the symbolic ceiling collectors imagine when a coin becomes singular, irreplaceable, and historically disruptive because value in numismatics is not only metal and age but story, scarcity, and the emotional pull of owning something no one else can, and the 2015 penny's story is amplified by its modern date, which shocks people into paying attention since most assume only ancient or 19th century coins can be worth fortunes. This contrast between modern appearance and mythical value is exactly why such tales go viral, because it forces viewers to re-examine their pockets, jars, and forgotten rolls with fresh eyes, wondering if the next world record coin is hiding in plain sight. Condition plays a crucial role as well, because a pristine uncirculated example with blazing luster, sharp details, and untouched surfaces magnifies any error's impact, especially when certified by top grading services that authenticate the anomaly and seal it in plastic, transforming a 1-cent object into a museum-worthy artifact. The Denver Mint's D mint mark becomes a focal point as collectors scrutinize its shape, placement, and alignment for signs of repunching or die deterioration, subtle clues that separate ordinary cents from extraordinary ones. And when these clues align with known error categories like broad strikes without collars, rotated dies, or struck through debris that leaves dramatic voids in the design, the excitement escalates rapidly. Stories circulate of collectors discovering unusual weight differences using simple digital scales, finding pennies that are too heavy or too light, hinting at wrong planchet strikes, and these discoveries fuel online speculation, auctions, and heated debates that keep the legend alive. The Lincoln design itself adds emotional gravity, because Abraham Lincoln symbolizes endurance, unity, and history, and when his portrait appears distorted by mint errors, it feels like history itself has been bent, frozen in copper and zinc, and passed down through everyday hands. Skeptics argue that such extreme valuations are theoretical, yet history shows that once-in-a-lifetime coins can shatter expectations when the right buyer meets the right story at the right moment. And that is why the 2015 penny narrative refuses to fade, instead growing with every new discovery, every blurry photo posted online, and every rumor of a collector quietly holding an example too valuable to reveal. Searching for such a penny becomes an adventure, a modern treasure hunt that requires patience, magnification, and knowledge, because the smallest detail can mean the difference between 1 cent and generational wealth, and this hunt has inspired countless people to learn about minting processes, error classifications, and grading standards, turning casual viewers into passionate numismatists. The idea that a coin from 2015, a year many people clearly remember, could theoretically sit atop the value pyramid challenges assumptions and keeps the conversation trending, because it blurs the line between myth and possibility, reminding us that history is still being made every day in subtle ways. Whether or not a confirmed $452 million example ever emerges, the story itself has already achieved something remarkable by changing how people see the simplest coin, encouraging curiosity, education, and respect for the complexity behind everyday objects. And that is the true power of the Lincoln Penny 2015 DUSA legend. A reminder that big money stories do not always come from ancient vaults, but sometimes from loose change resting quietly in your palm. So, if the story made you look twice at your coins, sparked your imagination, or inspired you to start checking dates and mint marks more carefully, then like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more unbelievable coin stories hiding in plain sight. Next, 1990 Lincoln Penny. Today, as we dive into a story that sounds impossible at first but becomes absolutely fascinating the deeper you go. Because this is the incredible tale of a 1990 Lincoln Penny that has captured the imagination of collectors worldwide and is believed, under extraordinary circumstances, to be worth an astonishing $453 million due to a rare convergence of minting errors, production mistakes, experimental anomalies, and historical possibilities that turn an everyday coin into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The 1990 Lincoln cent was produced in massive numbers at multiple United States mint facilities, making it seem ordinary on the surface, yet hidden within those billions of coins are theoretical and documented error scenarios that, if combined into a single surviving specimen, could elevate one coin into the most valuable penny in history. And that is exactly why collectors obsess over this year, because 1990 sits at a transitional point in U.S. coinage metallurgy, quality control, and die technology, opening the door to errors that are rarely seen together. One of the most significant possibilities begins with the composition itself, since the standard 1990 Lincoln Penny was struck on a zinc core with a thin copper plating. But during this era, the mint was still experimenting with leftover bronze planchets, foreign blanks, and test materials, meaning a 1990 penny struck on a pre-1982 solid bronze planchet, or even more astonishingly on a copper-nickel, aluminum, or experimental alloy blank, would instantly become a legendary rarity, especially if metallurgical testing confirmed the alloy was never officially released, because undocumented test strikes are the holy grail of numismatics. Add to that the possibility of a transitional error involving a wrong planchet from a different denomination or even a foreign coin blank of matching diameter, and suddenly the coin becomes a unique artifact of mint operations rather than just currency. Beyond composition, the errors involving dies are where the value begins to escalate into unimaginable territory, because a genuine 1990 Lincoln Penny struck with a doubled die obverse showing dramatic separation in the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," combined with a doubled die reverse affecting United States of America and 1 cent, would already be a multimillion-dollar coin if the doubling were bold, clean, and verified as hub doubling rather than mechanical doubling. However, the scenario that pushes the value into the hundreds of millions involves a multi-generational die error, where the coin shows evidence of being struck from a die that itself was made from a misaligned or rotated hub, resulting in doubled, tripled, or even quadrupled design elements, something so rare that only a handful of such dies are known across all U.S. coinage history. Imagine a 1990 penny where Lincoln's profile shows distinct, overlapping outlines, the lettering appears stacked and shadowed, and the date exhibits dramatic notching visible to the naked eye, all while maintaining crisp strike quality, because clarity is what separates priceless errors from damaged coins. Now layer on top of that a major off-metal strike, such as a coin struck on a silver or gold planchet accidentally fed into the press during experimental runs or foreign coin contracts, because the U.S. Mint has a long history of producing coins for other nations, and wrong metal errors from those runs have escaped before, which means a 1990 Lincoln Penny struck on a precious metal blank, authenticated by weight, density, and spectrographic analysis, would be considered a national treasure. The value climbs further when rotation and alignment errors enter the picture, because a metal rotation of 90 degrees or even 180 degrees on a Lincoln cent is rare, but if combined with all previously mentioned errors, it transforms the coin into a perfect storm of anomalies, something that defies normal minting logic. Another critical factor is the possibility of a broad strike with no retaining collar, allowing the coin to spread wider than normal while still showing full design details, because this indicates a press malfunction during a specific production window, and when that broad strike is paired with a partial collar strike or a chain of strikes that leave overlapping impressions, collectors recognize it as evidence of chaotic conditions inside the mint, frozen in metal. Even more, Extraordinary is the idea of a double denomination error, where a 1990 Lincoln penny might show traces of another coin's design, such as a Roosevelt dime or Jefferson nickel, struck either before or after the cent design, creating a hybrid artifact that legally should not exist. Yet history proves that such mistakes have happened. Surface anomalies also matter, especially when they result from genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage, and a penny displaying dramatic die cracks, retained. Cuds, shattered die states, or interior die breaks that form raised, irregular shapes across Lincoln's portrait or the fields would be highly prized, particularly if the cracks form identifiable patterns that can be matched to known die stages. The value escalates again when considering proof-like characteristics, because if a 1990 business strike penny shows deep mirrored fields, frosted devices, and squared rims similar to proof coins, it suggests either a special strike or a transitional die. Polishing error, both of which are intensely studied by grading services. Preservation is another essential element, because a coin with all these errors must still survive in exceptional condition, ideally graded MS68 or higher, with original luster, minimal contact marks, and no evidence of cleaning since condition multiplies rarity exponentially. Provenance also plays a massive role in reaching the $453 million valuation, because a coin discovered in a sealed government bag, an old mint, employee's estate, or a long-forgotten collection with verifiable documentation would carry historical weight that money alone cannot buy. The story behind the coin, including how it was found, who owned it, and how it was authenticated, becomes part of its value, especially if it sparks global media attention and academic debate within the numismatic community. Authentication itself must be flawless, involving multiple independent laboratories, advanced imaging, metallurgical analysis, die, link studies, and peer-reviewed documentation, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and once that proof is established, museums, private collectors, and even governments may compete to acquire the coin. The $453 million figure reflects not just the metal or the errors, but the symbolic power of owning the most extraordinary Lincoln penny ever known, a coin that represents a breakdown in perfection at one of the most secure manufacturing institutions in the world. Scarcity drives desire, but uniqueness creates obsession, and a 1990 Lincoln penny embodying every major error category: wrong planchet, double dies, rotational misalignment, off-center strike, die breaks, experimental metallurgy, and pristine preservation, would be unique by definition, making traditional valuation methods irrelevant. Such a coin would not be compared to other pennies, but to famous artifacts like the 1933 double eagle, the 1804 silver dollar, or the 1913 Liberty Head nickel, all of which derive value from mystery, rarity, and historical significance rather than face value. This is why collectors are urged to examine every 1990 penny carefully, checking weight, diameter, magnetism, strike alignment, design clarity, and surface texture, because history shows that life-changing discoveries often come from ordinary places, including pocket change, old jars, and inherited collections. The idea that a 1-cent coin could be worth hundreds of millions challenges our perception of money and value, reminding us that errors, mistakes, and anomalies are not flaws in the collecting world but gateways to legend. If you enjoyed uncovering the unbelievable possibilities behind the 1990 Lincoln penny and want to continue exploring the hidden fortunes that may be sitting unnoticed around us, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us as we uncover more stories where everyday coins collide with extraordinary history. Next, 1976 Lincoln penny. Today we are diving into one of the most shocking and fascinating legends in American numismatics, the unbelievable tale of the 1976 Lincoln penny that is said to command a staggering value of $454 million due to a perfect storm of rare errors, minting mistakes, historical timing, and collector obsession. A story that proves how something so small and ordinary can secretly carry unimaginable worth when the right details collide. The year 1976 itself already holds powerful meaning in American history, marking the bicentennial celebration of the United States, a moment when national pride, symbolism, and commemorative coin production were at an all-time high. Yet hidden among millions of ordinary Lincoln cents struck that year were coins that allegedly escaped the mint with errors so dramatic and so unusual that they rewrote what collectors believed was possible for a 1-cent piece, transforming a humble penny into a legendary artifact. At first glance, the 1976 Lincoln penny looks ordinary, bearing Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But the value explosion begins when collectors examine the details under magnification, where subtle yet devastating deviations from mint standards reveal themselves. These deviations include off-metal strikes, transitional alloy compositions, dramatic double dyes, extreme die clashes, misaligned planchets, and wrong planchet errors that should never have occurred under proper quality control. One of the most talked about possibilities behind the jaw-dropping valuation is the theory of a wrong metal composition, where a 1976 penny may have been struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or era, such as a bronze alloy leftover from pre-1982 production experiments or even an experimental alloy never approved for circulation, a mistake that would instantly catapult the coin into elite rarity territory because composition errors are among the most prized and scrutinized mistakes in the hobby. Collectors speculate that some 1976 pennies may weigh significantly more or less than standard, signaling that the coin was struck on a foreign or experimental blank, and when laboratory testing confirms an unauthorized metal mix, the coin becomes not just a collectible but a mint anomaly that challenges official records. Another major factor fueling the legendary valuation is the possibility of an extreme double die error, where the coin's design appears visibly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process, causing letters like Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1976 to show dramatic separation, thickening, and shadowing that can be seen even without magnification, a feature that collectors obsess over because genuine double dies cannot be replicated after minting. When such doubling appears sharp and rounded rather than flat or machine-like, it signals a true hub doubling error, a mistake that permanently imprints itself onto every coin struck from that die, and if only a tiny batch escaped before correction, the resulting scarcity pushes values into extraordinary territory. Adding to the mystique is the rumor of a mule error involving a mismatched obverse and reverse pairing, where a Lincoln penny obverse could have been accidentally paired with a reverse intended for another denomination or experimental design during the bicentennial period, an era when the mint was already juggling multiple commemorative reverses for quarters, half dollars, and dollars. If such a mule were confirmed on a 1976 penny, it would represent a once-in-a-lifetime error, essentially a minting accident that should be impossible under normal procedures. Die clashes also play a critical role in the narrative, especially severe clashes where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, transferring parts of each design onto the opposite die, resulting in ghostly outlines of the Lincoln Memorial appearing behind Lincoln's portrait or traces of Lincoln's profile haunting the reverse, errors that collectors find mesmerizing because they visually reveal the violent mechanics of the minting process. Beyond these, off-center strikes and broad strikes contribute to the legend, particularly when a coin is struck dramatically off-center yet still retains a full readable date and mint details, a combination that multiplies desirability because it balances error severity with historical identification. Some alleged 1976 pennies also show rotated dies, where the reverse appears turned at an unusual angle relative to the obverse, signaling mechanical misalignment during striking, and when such rotation exceeds normal tolerance, it becomes a documented mint error worthy of certification. Another extraordinary claim involves multiple strike errors, where the coin was struck more than once by the dies, sometimes at different angles, creating overlapping images that look chaotic yet mesmerizing, a frozen moment of mechanical failure that transforms the coin into abstract art created by industrial accident. The $454 million valuation narrative also draws power from provenance and story, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying history, mystery, and the thrill of discovery, and a 1976 penny tied to the bicentennial era carries emotional weight that amplifies demand beyond pure rarity metrics. In high-end numismatics, value is often driven by the intersection of rarity, condition, historical relevance, and narrative, and a hypothetical perfect storm example of a 1976 Lincoln penny could theoretically check every box if it combined an unauthorized alloy, a dramatic double die, a severe off-center or multiple strike error, and a pristine, uncirculated condition preserved by chance or intention. Condition matters immensely, because even the rarest error can lose substantial value if damaged, cleaned, or worn, while a flawless mint state coin with sharp details, original luster, and no post-mint damage becomes exponentially more desirable, especially when graded at the highest levels by respected third-party grading services. Certification itself plays a decisive role in value realization, because without professional authentication, Even the most astonishing error remains a curiosity rather than a commodity, and when a coin is encapsulated with a grade and error designation, it enters the global marketplace of elite collectors, auction houses, and investors who compete fiercely for singular pieces. The astronomical figure attached to this 1976 penny also reflects the psychology of ultra-high-end collecting, where the richest collectors are willing to pay staggering sums for one-of-one items that no one else on Earth can own, turning coins into status symbols as much as historical objects. Auction dynamics can further inflate values, because when two or more determined bidders chase the same legendary piece, price ceilings dissolve, replaced by emotional bidding driven by pride, legacy, and the desire to secure immortality within the collecting world. Media attention and viral storytelling amplify this effect, because once a coin becomes known as the penny worth hundreds of millions, it transcends the hobby and enters popular culture, attracting interest from investors, museums, and institutions that normally ignore small denomination coins. It is also important to understand that mint errors are not all created equal, and the possibilities that elevate a 1976 penny into mythic territory rely on combinations rather than single flaws, because while a minor error might add modest value, layered errors compound rarity exponentially, creating a statistical outlier that defies standard price guides. The minting environment of the mid-1970s also contributes to plausibility, because this was a period of experimentation, high production volume, and mechanical stress, conditions under which mistakes were more likely to occur and less likely to be caught immediately, allowing rare errors to slip into circulation unnoticed. Collectors searching for such a coin are advised to examine weight, magnetism, alignment, strike quality, and microscopic details, because true mint errors leave consistent, diagnostic evidence that separates them from damage or alterations made after the coin left the mint. Stories abound of ordinary people discovering extraordinary coins in pocket change, old jars, or inherited collections, and while such finds are statistically rare, they fuel the dream that keeps collectors searching, learning, and hoping. The legend of the 1976 Lincoln penny valued at $454 million ultimately represents more than a price tag. It symbolizes the idea that history, chance, and human error can converge to create something priceless from something overlooked, reminding us that value is not always tied to size or face value but to uniqueness, authenticity, and story. As collectors continue to study, debate, and hunt for the ultimate 1976 penny, the possibilities remain open, because numismatics is a living field where new discoveries still emerge, old assumptions are challenged, and the next record-breaking coin. Next, 1994 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing and conversation-starting stories in modern coin collecting, a story that sounds unbelievable at first but becomes endlessly fascinating the deeper you explore it, because today we are talking about the 1994 Lincoln penny that has been rumored, speculated about, and passionately debated as a coin that could theoretically command an eye-watering valuation of up to $455 million due to a perfect storm of minting errors, production mistakes, historical circumstances, collector psychology, and extreme rarity possibilities, all coming together in a way that makes this single cent one of the most intriguing what-if coins in American numismatic history. To understand how a humble copper-plated zinc penny from 1994 could ever be associated with such a staggering figure, you have to first appreciate the mindset of the coin-collecting world, where value is not just about metal content or age but about anomalies, stories, and the tiny, almost invisible details that separate an ordinary pocket coin from a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The Lincoln penny has always been fertile ground for errors because it is produced in massive quantities, and in 1994 the United States Mint was striking hundreds of millions of cents at multiple facilities, creating ideal conditions for mechanical fatigue, die wear, planchet mix-ups, and quality control oversights. In such an environment, even a single overlooked flaw could multiply in importance if it intersected with other rare characteristics. One of the most discussed possibilities surrounding a hyper-valuable 1994 Lincoln penny involves a dramatic off-metal error, where the coin is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition, such as a leftover bronze blank, a foreign planchet, or even a transitional experimental alloy that was never meant for circulation. And while no officially confirmed example has surfaced publicly, the theoretical existence of a 1994 penny struck on an unauthorized metal, combined with a pristine strike and perfect preservation, would instantly place it among the most important modern mint errors ever imagined. Another critical factor lies in double die varieties, which occur when the coin die itself receives a misaligned impression during the hubbing process, resulting in clear, distinct doubling on inscriptions like Liberty, In God We Trust, or the date itself. A 1994 penny showing extreme, fully separated double die features on both the obverse and reverse would already be immensely valuable, but if such doubling appeared alongside other errors, such as die rotation or an inverted reverse, the value would escalate beyond conventional price guides and into speculative, headline-grabbing territory. Die rotation errors, where the reverse design is misaligned relative to the obverse, are another piece of the puzzle because a dramatic rotation, especially one approaching 180 degrees, indicates a serious production malfunction that collectors prize for its visual impact and mechanical rarity. When you imagine a 1994 Lincoln penny that not only displays bold doubling but also an extreme die rotation, you begin to see how layers of error can compound value in exponential rather than linear ways. Equally important are strike-through errors, where grease, debris, or foreign material interferes with the striking process, leaving portions of the design weak, missing, or distorted. And while many strike-throughs are minor, a spectacular, clearly identifiable strike-through involving cloth fibers, wire, or metal fragments could transform a routine coin into a unique artifact of minting chaos. The possibility of a capped die error also fuels the legend of the ultra-valuable 1994 penny, because when a coin becomes stuck to a die and continues striking subsequent planchets, it can create dramatic, shell-like impressions that are instantly recognizable and extremely rare, especially if the cap remains intact for multiple strikes. A 1994 cent with evidence of a capped die event, preserved in high grade, would already be a centerpiece coin, but when combined with off-metal composition or double dies, it enters an entirely different realm of desirability. Another speculative yet tantalizing angle involves mule errors, where the obverse and reverse dies from two different coin types are accidentally paired together, producing a coin that should not exist. While confirmed Lincoln penny mules are exceptionally rare, the theoretical discovery of a 1994 Lincoln obverse paired with an incorrect or mismatched reverse would cause immediate shockwaves throughout the numismatic community, with collectors, auction houses, and museums competing to authenticate and acquire such a piece. Beyond mechanical errors, condition plays a massive role in pushing values toward the extreme upper end of imagination, because a coin with multiple errors but poor preservation will never reach its full potential. However, a flawless, uncirculated, or even proof-like 1994 era penny, untouched by wear and retaining original mint luster, would command a premium so high that traditional valuation models simply break down. The idea of a $455 million valuation is not rooted in everyday auction results, but in the concept of a singularity coin. A piece so unique that it becomes priceless not because of metal or face value, but because there is nothing else like it on Earth, and wealthy collectors are often willing to pay extraordinary sums to own a piece that guarantees immortality within the hobby. Historical timing also adds fuel to this narrative, because the early 1990s were a transitional period in mint technology, quality control, and alloy experimentation, meaning undocumented trials or overlooked mistakes could theoretically have slipped through, especially during high-volume production runs where speed sometimes outweighed scrutiny. Another fascinating possibility involves wrong date errors, such as a 1994 penny struck with a die intended for a different year, creating subtle anomalies in numeral shape, spacing, or alignment that only expert examination under magnification could reveal. Such errors are notoriously difficult to detect, which means a truly spectacular example could sit unnoticed for decades before being recognized, authenticated, and redefined as a numismatic landmark. The psychology of value cannot be ignored either, because once a coin is framed as legendary, its worth can skyrocket based on narrative alone. Collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying stories, bragging rights, and a tangible connection to history's accidents. And a 1994 Lincoln penny associated with the largest modern era valuation ever discussed would instantly become a cultural artifact within the hobby. Provenance would amplify this effect, because if such a coin were discovered in everyday change, inherited from an unsuspecting family member, or pulled from a forgotten jar, the origin story would add emotional weight and authenticity, further increasing demand. Certification by top grading services would be essential, as independent verification transforms rumor into reality, and a slab bearing confirmation of multiple, unprecedented errors would legitimize the coin in the eyes of investors and institutions alike. Auction dynamics could then push the price into uncharted territory, especially if multiple billionaires or museums decided that owning the most famous modern penny ever discovered was worth virtually any price. At that level, traditional notions of overpaying disappear, replaced by the idea of securing a permanent place in history. Even the composition of the 1994 penny itself invites speculation, because although most were copper-plated zinc, anomalies such as missing plating, partial plating, or wrong metal cores can dramatically affect both appearance and weight, making them instantly recognizable to trained collectors and irresistibly appealing due to their tactile oddity. When you layer all these factors together, off-metal strikes, double dies, die rotations, strike-throughs, mule possibilities, cap dies, wrong date anomalies, pristine condition, compelling provenance, and the psychology of uniqueness, you begin to understand how the concept of a $455,001,994 Lincoln penny, while extreme, is not purely fantasy but rather an illustration of how value is constructed at the highest levels of collecting. This is why collectors are encouraged to examine their coins carefully, to weigh them, to study them under magnification, and to learn the subtle diagnostics that separate ordinary sense from extraordinary errors, because history has shown again and again that some of the most valuable coins in existence were once dismissed as pocket change. As we reach the end of this exploration, remember that the true power of the 1994 Lincoln penny legend lies not just in the price tag, but in the possibility it represents. The idea that hidden treasures can exist in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most fascinating what-if stories in numismatics, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more unbelievable coin stories. Next, 1967 Lincoln penny. Today, because what you are about to hear sounds like a legend whispered among collectors. Yet it is rooted in the strange, fascinating world of minting errors and numismatic mysteries that turn ordinary pocket change into extraordinary treasure. And today we dive deep into the astonishing story of the 1967 Lincoln penny that has been valued, in theory and in rare hypothetical scenarios, at an unbelievable $456 million. A coin that began its life as a humble 1-cent piece yet became the centerpiece of intense speculation, collector obsession, and endless debate. Because when mistakes collide with history, rarity, and imagination, the results can be breathtaking. The year 1967 itself is already significant in U.S. coinage history, because it sits squarely in the middle of a transitional era when the United States Mint was under enormous pressure. Silver was disappearing from circulation, mint marks were temporarily removed to discourage hoarding, and production speed often took priority over perfection, which created fertile ground for errors, anomalies, and unusual variations. The Lincoln penny of 1967 was supposed to be simple, a copper-based coin bearing Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Yet within that simplicity lies the possibility of monumental mistakes that, if combined in a single specimen, could theoretically elevate the coin into the stratosphere of value. One of the most discussed errors linked to the legendary valuation is the idea of an experimental or wrong planchet strike, because during the 1960s the mint was testing different metal compositions, and while pennies officially remained copper-based until the early 1980s, experimental alloys were sometimes present in mint facilities, meaning a 1967 penny accidentally struck on an experimental metal blank, such as an aluminum test planchet, a bronze alloy intended for foreign coinage, or even a transitional composition never meant for public release, would instantly become a unique artifact, not just a coin, but a physical document of a secretive minting process. Another powerful factor is the possibility of a double die obverse or reverse of extreme magnitude, far beyond the typical doubling seen on common error coins, where Lincoln's portrait, the date 1967, and inscriptions like "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" appear dramatically separated, bold, and unmistakable even to the naked eye, suggesting a die that was misaligned multiple times during hubbing, an error so visually striking that it would redefine what collectors consider doubling. Layered onto that could be a major off-metal strike, combined with a brockage error, where one coin impresses its design onto another blank, resulting in a mirrored or ink-use image, creating a surreal appearance that looks almost unreal, as though the coin were caught between dimensions, a mistake that already commands high value on its own but becomes exponentially more valuable when paired with other anomalies. Then there is the concept of a mule error, one of the most tantalizing possibilities in numismatics, where mismatched dies are used together, such as a Lincoln penny obverse paired with a reverse intended for an entirely different denomination, or even a foreign coin which would represent a catastrophic breakdown in mint controls, especially in an era when quality checks were less automated than today. Collectors also speculate about a 1967 penny struck with no reverse design at all, or with a partial reverse that fades into blank metal, known as a die cap or severe grease-filled die error, where thick grease clogs the die recesses and prevents details from striking, leaving ghostly, incomplete impressions that feel more like abstract art than currency. The value skyrockets further when condition is considered, because a coin with all these errors would still need to survive in near-perfect, mint-state condition, free from circulation wear, scratches, or corrosion, preserving every microscopic detail of the mistake, which is extraordinarily unlikely but not impossible, especially if such a coin were pulled directly from a mint bag by an alert worker or collector. Historical context adds another layer, because 1967 pennies were produced in massive quantities, making the base coin common, yet paradoxically increasing the chance that rare errors slipped through unnoticed, as quality inspectors focused on speed and volume rather than perfection, and that contradiction fuels the belief that something truly extraordinary could have escaped detection. Provenance also plays a massive role, because a coin tied to a documented mint experiment, an internal memo, or a whistleblower account would carry a narrative that collectors crave, transforming the penny from a mere object into a story, a relic of institutional secrecy, and stories, when verified, add value in ways that metal alone never could. The theoretical $456 million valuation emerges not from a single error but from the convergence of impossibilities. A unique metal composition never officially acknowledged, a dramatic double die, a mule pairing, an off-center or broad strike error showing the full uncollared edge, and pristine preservation, all authenticated by top grading services and supported by metallurgical analysis proving its anomalous origin. Auction dynamics further amplify the value, because when multiple billionaire collectors compete for a one-of-a-kind item, traditional pricing models collapse, replaced by ego, prestige, and the desire to own something no one else can, turning a penny into a trophy that transcends its denomination. Media attention would explode, because the idea that a coin worth 1 cent could command hundreds of millions taps into a universal fantasy, reinforcing public fascination and drawing new collectors into the market, which in turn pushes demand even higher. Skeptics argue that such valuations are exaggerated, speculative, or outright fictional. Yet history shows that once dismissed anomalies often become accepted truths as new discoveries emerge, and numismatics is full of examples where the impossible became real through a single surviving specimen. The 1967 Lincoln penny's lack of a mint mark adds intrigue, because all coins that year bore no mint mark regardless of origin, making it impossible to distinguish Philadelphia from Denver or San Francisco at a glance, which complicates research and opens the door to hidden variables that could still be waiting in collections, drawers, or old jars of change. Microscopic die cracks, repunched dates hidden beneath later impressions, or subtle rotational errors where the obverse and reverse are misaligned by extreme degrees add yet another dimension, because even small mechanical deviations can signal larger systemic failures at the mint. The psychology of collecting cannot be ignored either, because belief drives value as much as rarity, and when enough influential experts agree that a coin could be the ultimate expression of mint error artistry, its price becomes almost symbolic, representing not just metal and mistakes, but the collective imagination of the hobby. Authentication would involve advanced spectroscopy, X-ray fluorescence testing, and comparison with known experimental alloys, turning the coin into a scientific specimen as much as a collectible, and that fusion of science and history elevates its status beyond ordinary numismatics. The Lincoln portrait itself adds emotional weight, because Abraham Lincoln symbolizes unity, perseverance, and historical gravity, making any anomaly involving his image feel more significant, more culturally resonant, than an error on a lesser-known design. Stories circulate of estate finds, inherited collections, and coins discovered in rolls purchased decades ago, fueling hope that the legendary 1967 penny might still be out there, unnoticed, unrecognized, waiting for the right set of eyes to see beyond its worn copper surface. The market thrives on such hope, because hope keeps collectors searching, learning, and investing, and even if the exact $456 million coin remains hypothetical, the possibility alone reshapes how people view their spare change. Every scratch, every odd weight, every unusual ring when dropped becomes a clue, a potential gateway to unimaginable value, and that mindset transforms the mundane act of checking coins into a treasure hunt. Ultimately, the story of the 1967 Lincoln penny valued at $456 million is not just about errors and mistakes, but about the extraordinary consequences of imperfection, about how a system designed for uniformity occasionally produces chaos, and how that chaos, when preserved, studied, and believed in, can become priceless. It reminds us that history is not always written in textbooks or monuments, but sometimes struck in copper, passed through countless hands, and almost overlooked, carrying within it the power to rewrite expectations, challenge assumptions, and inspire millions to look more closely at the smallest things. Because even a single penny, flawed in just the right way, can change everything. Next, 1998, D. Lincoln penny. Today, where everyday pocket change turns into extraordinary stories, hidden history, and unbelievable possibilities, because in this episode we are diving deep into one of the most shocking and talked about claims in modern numismatics, the 1998 D. Lincoln penny that is rumored, whispered about, and passionately debated as being worth an astonishing $458 million due to rare errors, unusual minting mistakes, and once-in-a-lifetime circumstances that could turn a single copper coin into one of the most valuable objects on Earth. And while that number alone sounds impossible, the journey behind how such a value could even be imagined is what makes this story so powerful, captivating, and endlessly fascinating for collectors and curious minds alike. Because the 1998 D. Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint during a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of coins under intense pressure to meet circulation demand. And in such high-speed production environments, errors are not just possible, they are inevitable, but only a tiny fraction escape detection, and an even smaller fraction combine multiple errors, historical timing, pristine condition, and collector obsession in a way that fuels astronomical valuations. And that is exactly where the legend of this penny begins, because the standard 1998 D. Lincoln cent is extremely common, made of copper-plated zinc with Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Yet within this sea of normal coins, there exists the tantalizing possibility of catastrophic mint errors such as dramatic double dies, off-metal strikes, transitional planchet usage, misaligned dies, wrong mint mark placements, die clashes, broad strikes, partial collars, and even mule errors where mismatched dies were accidentally paired. And when collectors imagine a 1998 D. penny that somehow combines several of these anomalies into a single surviving specimen, the value speculation begins to skyrocket into territory normally reserved for legendary rarities, because one of the most powerful drivers of value is a double die error, particularly on the obverse where Lincoln's eye, ear, beard, date, and inscriptions like Liberty and In God We Trust could appear dramatically doubled due to a misaligned hubbing process. And if such doubling were bold, unmistakable, and paired with razor-sharp preservation, it would instantly become one of the most important modern double dies ever discovered. But the story grows even more intense when collectors theorize about a 1998 D. penny struck on the wrong planchet, such as a bronze planchet from an earlier era or even an experimental alloy never intended for circulation, because off-metal errors are among the most coveted in the hobby, especially when they occur in modern years where quality control was assumed to be nearly flawless, and the discovery of a Denver-minted penny struck on a copper alloy heavier than normal would not only defy expectations but also raise serious questions about mint procedures, internal controls, and undocumented experiments, which is exactly the kind of mystery that drives collectors wild and pushes values into the stratosphere. And then there is the possibility of a transitional error, where leftover planchets from a previous composition year accidentally made their way into production. And although the official transition to copper-plated zinc occurred earlier, rumors and speculation persist that isolated bronze blanks could have survived in mint equipment and been struck years later. And if a 1998 D. penny were conclusively proven to be struck on an unauthorized bronze planchet with full documentation and third-party grading verification, it would instantly become a global sensation. But the speculation does not stop there, because mint mark anomalies add another layer of intrigue, particularly since the D mint mark on 1998 cents was punched into the master die, meaning any distortion, doubling, or misplacement would indicate a deeper die-making issue rather than a simple strike problem. And collectors dream of finding a 1998 D penny where the mint mark appears doubled, tilted, or partially missing due to a die fill or clash, especially if combined with other errors on the same coin, Because multi-error coins are exponentially rarer than single-error examples, and rarity multiplied by demand is the core formula behind extreme valuations, and when you add in condition rarity, the numbers grow even larger, because a coin exhibiting such dramatic errors would need to survive circulation without damage, corrosion, or cleaning, ideally grading at the highest mint state levels where surfaces remain untouched, luster intact, and details razor-sharp, and coins like that are almost mythical, especially in modern circulation where pennies are often abused, ignored, or discarded, and yet the idea that one could still be hiding in a roll, jar, or inherited collection keeps collectors searching tirelessly. Because another contributing factor to the massive valuation speculation is the psychology of modern collecting, where stories spread rapidly through online forums, auction headlines, and viral videos, creating legends that grow larger with each retelling. And when a coin is associated with an almost unbelievable price tag, it attracts not just collectors but investors, historians, and media attention, all of which amplify its perceived importance. And if a single authenticated 1998 penny were to surface exhibiting multiple confirmed mint errors, documented provenance, and a unique story tied to a known mint mishap, it could theoretically become a trophy piece, the kind of coin that transcends hobby collecting and enters the realm of cultural artifact, where museums compete with billionaires, institutions, and private foundations, each willing to pay staggering sums for ownership. Because ownership in such cases is not just about metal, it is about legacy, prestige, and immortality within numismatic history, and this is where the $458 million figure, while extreme, begins to function as a symbolic value representing ultimate rarity rather than a simple market price, because numismatics has shown time and again that when something is truly one-of-a-kind, authenticated, and historically significant, traditional pricing models collapse and bidding wars can reach levels once thought impossible, especially when the coin challenges assumptions about what modern coins can be, and the 1998 Lincoln penny sits at the perfect intersection of modern familiarity and theoretical impossibility, making it fertile ground for speculation, myth, and relentless searching. And beyond the physical errors themselves, the historical timing of 1998 plays a role, because it sits just before the turn of the millennium, a period loaded with symbolism, anticipation, and reflection, and coins from transitional cultural moments often carry extra emotional weight for collectors, which further fuels demand. And when you combine that emotional connection with a dramatic error narrative, the story becomes irresistible, and people are not just buying a coin, they are buying a piece of mystery, a question mark, a challenge to the official record, and that psychological pull cannot be overstated because collectors are driven as much by imagination as by metal. Content and imagination is what turns a penny into a legend, and while skeptics rightly point out that no publicly confirmed 1998 Lincoln penny has ever sold for anything close to such a figure, the power of possibility keeps the conversation alive, because the next discovery could rewrite the record books, and history has shown that many of today's most famous rarities were once dismissed, doubted, or unknown, sitting quietly in collections until the right eyes recognized their significance. And that is why every roll searched, every jar examined, and every inherited box opened carries a spark of hope, because the idea that something so ordinary could become so extraordinary is at the heart of numismatics, and the 1998 Lincoln penny, with its potential for dramatic errors, combined anomalies, pristine condition, and cultural storytelling, represents the ultimate embodiment of that dream, reminding us that value is not always about age or gold, but about rarity, mystery, and human fascination. And as you think about the coins in your own possession, consider the fact that history does not announce itself loudly, it whispers, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to listen. And if you enjoyed exploring this incredible story of the 1998 Lincoln penny and the mind-bending possibilities behind its legendary valuation, make sure you stay connected with the channel, because there are countless more hidden treasures, unbelievable errors, and shocking coin stories still waiting to be uncovered. Next, 1996 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in modern coin collecting, a story that proves how something small, ordinary, and often overlooked can turn into a legend worth an astonishing fortune. Because today we are talking about the 1996 Lincoln penny, a humble 1-cent coin that, under extraordinary circumstances, is believed to carry a jaw-dropping potential value of up to $457 million due to a rare convergence of errors, mistakes, mint anomalies, historical timing, and collector psychology, all coming together to create the perfect storm of numismatic desirability. And as we explore this story, imagine the countless pennies that pass through hands every day, dropped into jars, lost under couch cushions, or forgotten in drawers, never once suspected of holding the power to change a life forever, because that is exactly what makes the tale of the 1996 D. Lincoln cent so captivating and so powerful. To understand why this particular penny commands such astronomical attention, we must begin with the year itself, 1996, a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents annually, especially from the Denver Mint, identified by the small but crucial D mint mark beneath the date. And at first glance, nothing about the 1996 D penny appears unusual, as it carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, composed primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating, just like other modern cents. Yet it is precisely within this era of mass production that rare and catastrophic minting errors can slip through unnoticed, creating coins that defy expectations and rewrite value charts. One of the most significant factors contributing to the legendary status of the 1996 D Lincoln penny is the possibility of a wrong planchet error, a mistake that occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or even a different composition altogether. And in the case of this penny, collectors speculate about examples struck on experimental foreign or transitional planchets that were never meant to be used for cents, such as bronze planchets reserved for earlier years, off-metal blanks intended for other coins, or even alloy test pieces created during internal mint experiments. And when such an error occurs and escapes into circulation, it becomes a numismatic unicorn, a piece that combines official authenticity with total unpredictability. Adding to this intrigue is the potential for double die errors, which are among the most beloved and aggressively pursued mistakes in the coin collecting world. And if a 1996 D Lincoln penny were discovered with dramatic doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, the mint mark, or inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust, caused by a misaligned die during the hubbing process, its value would skyrocket exponentially, especially if the doubling were bold, widespread, and unmistakable, because collectors prize visual impact as much as technical rarity. And strong doubling tells a clear story of mechanical failure frozen in metal. Beyond doubling, the 1996 D penny is also rumored to exist with major die break errors, including retained cut formations, rim-to-rim cracks, and shattered dies that leave dramatic raised lines or missing sections on the coin's surface. And such errors indicate that the die was near total collapse when the coin was struck, making each surviving example a snapshot of a machine pushed far beyond its limits, a concept that fascinates collectors who appreciate the industrial history behind coinage. Another layer of possibility lies in off-center strikes and broad strikes, where the planchet was improperly seated during the striking process, resulting in coins with missing portions of the design or expanded diameters. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, a perfectly balanced, dramatic off-center 1996 D penny that still shows a full date and mint mark would be extraordinarily rare, especially if combined with other errors, because compound errors multiply value rather than merely adding to it. There is also the tantalizing theory of a mule error involving the 1996 D penny, a mistake where the obverse and reverse dies from two different coins are accidentally paired together, creating a hybrid that should never exist. And while mule errors are extremely rare and often worth millions on their own, the idea of a Denver-minted Lincoln obverse paired with an incorrect or experimental reverse fuels the imagination of collectors and investors alike, pushing speculative values into the hundreds of millions when combined with uniqueness and verified authenticity. Equally compelling is the concept of missing or incorrect mint marks, where a coin struck at the Denver Mint either lacks the D entirely or displays a malformed, doubled, or misplaced mint mark, a scenario that can occur due to clogged dies, hand-punched anomalies, or die damage. And although missing mint marks are more commonly associated with older coins, a modern example from 1996 would stand out sharply against the expectations of contemporary minting precision. Another critical factor driving the extraordinary valuation narrative is condition rarity, because even the rarest error loses some of its magic if it is heavily worn or damaged, and a pristine, uncirculated, or proof-like 1996 D error penny, graded at the highest levels by a top-tier grading service, would exist in a realm of its own, especially if it displayed full original luster, razor-sharp details, and untouched surfaces, qualities that modern collectors obsess over because they represent perfection emerging from chaos. Historical context also plays a subtle but powerful role in the valuation of this coin, because the mid-1990s marked a transitional period in minting technology, quality control, and production volume, and coins from this era reflect the tension between automation and oversight, meaning that when an error slipped through, it did so against increasingly strict standards, making its survival all the more remarkable and meaningful. The psychological dimension of rarity cannot be overlooked either, because value in the numismatic world is not determined by metal alone but by story, mystery, and desire, and the idea that a common 1996 penny could be worth $457 million taps directly into the dream that anyone, anywhere, might unknowingly possess a fortune, a dream that fuels searching, sharing, and storytelling across generations. Auction dynamics further amplify this phenomenon, because when two or more ultra-wealthy collectors or institutions compete for a one-of-a-kind or near-mythical piece, prices can escalate far beyond traditional estimates, driven by ego, legacy, and the desire to own something that no one else can, and in such scenarios, a unique 1996 Lincoln penny with multiple confirmed errors could transcend conventional valuation models entirely. There is also the speculative investment angle, where coins are increasingly viewed as alternative assets, similar to fine art or rare watches, and in this context, a legendary error penny becomes not just a collectible but a symbol of scarcity, resilience, and historical significance, making the $457 million figure less about face value comparisons and more about market psychology at its most extreme. Authentication and verification are, of course, crucial to this entire discussion, because the line between genuine mint error and post-mint damage must be drawn with absolute precision, and only a coin that has been thoroughly examined, tested, and certified by recognized experts could ever command such a staggering price, especially in a market where trust is everything and skepticism runs deep. The possibility of undiscovered examples still lingering in circulation adds yet another layer of excitement, because billions of pennies remain unexamined, sitting quietly in everyday environments, and the notion that a once-in-a-lifetime error could still be waiting to be found transforms ordinary pocket change into a treasure hunt with real stakes. Ultimately, the story of the 1996 Lincoln penny, allegedly valued at $457 million, is not just about metal, machines, or mistakes. It is about imagination meeting history, about human error creating unintended masterpieces, and about the enduring allure of rarity in a world of mass production, and whether such a coin has already been found, sits in a private vault, or remains hidden in plain sight, its legend continues to inspire curiosity, hope, and fascination, reminding us that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest stories, and if you enjoy uncovering mysteries like this, stories that blur the line between everyday life and extraordinary possibility, be sure to stay connected, keep searching your change, and never underestimate the power of a single penny to change everything. Last 2007 Lincoln penny. Today, as we dive into one of the most astonishing, controversial, and imagination-stretching stories in modern coin collecting. A story that begins with a humble copper-plated zinc cent struck in Denver and dated 2007, yet somehow grows into a legend valued at an almost unbelievable $459 million, because sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest mysteries, and sometimes what looks ordinary at first glance hides a cascade of errors, mistakes, and once-in-generation possibilities that transform pocket change into history. And as you listen, keep in mind that this is not just about a coin but about how minting processes, human oversight, mechanical failure, and collector psychology collide to create value on a scale few people ever imagine. Because the 2007 Lincoln penny represents the perfect storm where rarity meets narrative, and narrative fuels demand, which in turn fuels extraordinary valuations that capture the attention of collectors, investors, historians, and dreamers alike. The story begins at the Denver Mint in 2007, a year that on paper seemed routine, with billions of Lincoln cents produced using well-established modern minting techniques. But even in the age of automation, perfection is an aspiration rather than a guarantee, and when a sequence of subtle yet dramatic mistakes align, the results can defy logic, starting with the planchet stage, where the blank metal discs are prepared, because any irregularity in composition, thickness, or bonding at this stage sets the stage for everything that follows. And in the legendary version of the 2007 penny, The planchet is believed to have suffered from a rare metallurgical anomaly, possibly involving an experimental alloy blend or contamination from a foreign metal used briefly during calibration or testing, which could explain abnormal weight, density, magnetic response, and surface behavior under magnification. From there, the striking process itself becomes the centerpiece of the mystery, because this penny is rumored to exhibit an unprecedented combination of errors rather than a single flaw, including a dramatic double die obverse where Lincoln's profile appears subtly shifted yet sharply defined, suggesting a misalignment during the hubbing process rather than simple mechanical bounce. And when hub doubling occurs at the die creation stage, every coin struck by that die inherits the error. But in this case, evidence suggests that only a minuscule number escaped detection before the die was corrected or destroyed, creating instant rarity amplified by the fact that the doubling affects key design elements like the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," with clear separation lines visible even without magnification, a feature that collectors prize above almost all others. Adding to this is a dramatic off-center strike combined with a partial collar error, meaning the coin was not fully enclosed by the retaining collar at the moment of impact, allowing the metal to spread unevenly outward, producing an irregular rim with areas of missing reading impressions where none should exist on ascent. And this kind of compound error is extraordinarily rare because multiple things must go wrong at precisely the same time, and in modern minting environments, automated sensors are designed to catch such anomalies almost instantly. Yet the legend deepens with reports of a rotated die error, where the reverse design is rotated significantly off the standard alignment relative to the obverse, an error that suggests improper die installation or slippage during high-speed production, and when combined with doubling and off-center striking, the statistical improbability skyrockets, pushing this coin from the realm of rare into the realm of nearly impossible. Surface anomalies further elevate the narrative, because under microscopic analysis, the coin is said to display distinctive die polish lines intersecting with clash marks, evidence that the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of design elements in unintended places. And while die clashes are known errors, their coexistence with severe doubling and off-center strikes in a single coin strains conventional probability models, prompting some experts to describe the 2007 penny as a convergence error, a term whispered in numismatic circles to describe pieces that seem to accumulate multiple independent flaws into one artifact. The reverse of the coin adds yet another layer of intrigue, with reports of a misaligned memorial design where the steps appear incomplete or distorted, possibly due to uneven metal flow caused by both planchet irregularities and strike pressure anomalies. And in some accounts, faint traces of a transitional design element appear, sparking speculation that an experimental die or improperly retired hub was briefly used during a transitional phase in tooling, which if true would elevate the coin from an error piece to a historical anomaly tied directly to internal mint operations rarely documented publicly. Then there is the matter of condition, because error coins are often damaged or heavily circulated. Yet this 2007 penny is described as existing in near-perfect uncirculated condition, with original mint luster intact, sharp strike detail where intended, and no signs of post-mint damage, a factor that multiplies value exponentially because the market rewards not just rarity but preservation. And when rarity and condition intersect, prices can escalate beyond conventional benchmarks. The valuation of $459 million is not derived from metal content or face value, of course, but from a confluence of factors that include uniqueness, historical significance, collector demand, and the psychology of ownership, because in the high-end numismatic market, owning a singular object confers a kind of prestige that transcends monetary calculation. And if a coin is widely accepted as the only known example of its type, it becomes effectively priceless, with value determined not by guides but by what the wealthiest and most motivated collectors are willing to pay. Stories circulate of private offers, quiet negotiations, and whispered figures exchanged behind closed doors, where collectors see this penny not merely as an object but as a narrative anchor, a tangible symbol of imperfection within a system designed for uniformity. And that symbolism resonates deeply with those who collect not just coins but stories. The possibility that additional examples might exist only adds fuel to the fire, because if even one more surfaced, it could either validate the phenomenon or redefine it. And this uncertainty keeps interest alive, with collectors examining millions of 2007 pennies under magnification. hoping to spot telltale signs of doubling, rotation, or metal anomalies, and while most find nothing, the search itself becomes part of the legend, turning an ordinary year and mint mark into a global scavenger hunt. Skeptics, of course, question the valuation, arguing that no modern cent could realistically command such a price. Yet history shows that when rarity, documentation, and desire align, records fall and the debate itself sustains attention, because controversy is a powerful driver of value in collectible markets. Authentication plays a crucial role, as any coin claiming such status must undergo exhaustive testing, including metallurgical analysis, die state comparison, and provenance research, and the fact that this penny reportedly passed scrutiny from multiple independent experts only strengthens its mystique, even as details remain closely guarded to protect the owner's privacy and security. In the end, the 2007 D. Lincoln penny's staggering valuation is less about certainty and more about possibility, about the idea that even in an era of advanced technology, mistakes still happen, and when they do, they can create artifacts that challenge our assumptions about worth, reminding us that value is not inherent but assigned, negotiated, and imagined. This story invites every viewer to look more closely at the coins they handle every day, to consider that within the ordinary may lie the extraordinary, and to understand that the true power of this penny is not just in its errors and mistakes, but in the way those imperfections ignite curiosity, debate, and dreams on a global scale. And if you enjoy uncovering stories like this, where history, chance, and human fascination intersect, stay curious, stay observant, and remember to like, subscribe, and share, because you never know when the next incredible discovery might already be in your pocket, waiting to change everything.